Hello everybody, welcome to the channel. Something a little bit different today besides guitars, guitar amps. A few weeks ago this Hotrod Deluxe that I use started having a little bit of an oscillating noise to it, just low. Then it started losing volume, then it started popping. So never have done anything to it, owned it several years. So went ahead, put it on the bench. So went ahead and done some upgrades to it. I'm going to try to get it in here where we can kind of see maybe some of the stuff I've done. Looking at it kind of backwards here, so it's kind of hard to tell where I'm at. Okay. Replaced the resistor here, set it off the board. These Hotrod Deluxe, Hotrod DeVille's, they have some inherent problems. Mainly cheap parts and bad design. The workmanship's probably okay for mass production, but they place a lot of components on the board that build a lot of heat. Let's see if I can get over here. Yeah, I'm there. They have these, what we call a cement resistor, whatever, 5K resistors. Get that in the camera. These build a lot of heat, and they place those directly on the board right here. And what happens is they build so much heat, the traces on the back of the board start to disintegrate. You can pull this board. I should have done this video while I was doing it, but man, watching people do electronics is somewhat boring and time consuming. But if you pull this board down, pull it back, all this in here will be burnt, brown, black. Luckily, this one is just starting to turn. The traces weren't damaged, but that's one thing to change on these. If you've got one and you hadn't had this done, take it somewhere, get it done. Your amp's going to last a whole lot longer than if you don't. You can look at it and it'll look fine. If you pull this board and look at the back side, then you've got trouble. So this resistor over here, these here I changed. The grid resistors changed. All the electrolytic capacitors here changed. Did change this one from 47, let's see, what was it? 500 to a 100 450 volt. This will give your amp a bassier tone where they kind of sound thin and shrill. It'll bassen up the amp by changing that capacitance. I did a mod on the mids to kind of, when you're on the overdrive channel, it gives you a little more control. Changed the volume pot out because the hot rods and all are so touchy because of the volume potentiometer. Supposedly changed it out to what should be the proper one. I can tell no difference at all. It's still 1 to 3 is where is 0 to wide open, and after that, I think there's a resistor in here that you can change that'll help that. I didn't look it up, didn't take the time to do it. I'm trying to hurry up and get all this stuff done. So I'm trying to think what else. New tubes, a set of JJ tubes. I'm sure the tubes that were in it were probably the original tubes. Part of my problem, I think, was a bad 6L6. Went ahead and put new tubes in, rebiased it. The bias was set relatively high. It was about 67, and I set these at 62. Fender, I think, goes between 60 and 70 is acceptable. If you want to buy a lot of tubes, set it 70. 60, 65, somewhere there you're not going to tell a difference. I set these at 62. Here's your bias adjustment. Here's your test point for your bias. Cleaned all the potentiometers. Hopefully fixed the light. It's kind of sketchy. It may work. What else did I do? I may repeat myself because I'm just kind of looking at it as I go. Replaced the 2 input jacks with switchcraft jacks. One of them was, they're both really cheap made plastic sorry jacks. One of them, this one, the second input, number 2, has something that's been dropped down in it and stuck in there. It's never worked since I had the amp. I never use it anyway. I always use input 1. One of the capacitors, this one here, the 47, was starting to leak around the bottom right there. And that was probably a big part of my problem. These IC caps are cheap junk. So that's good to have somebody go in and replace these caps. Replace these resistors, move them up off the board. Oh, I'm trying to think if there was anything else I did. Seems like I'm leaving something out. Let's see, modded the mids, replaced the volume, potentiometer, 2 input jacks, new caps, new resistors. Didn't replace any of these caps. They don't give much problems. These ones right here. All in all, I think it sounds better than it did before. But if you're going to work on one of these yourself, you got to know you're fooling with some power. Research, find out how to drain the power off these capacitors before you start fooling around, or you will get lit up. When you're going to set your bias, I work on radios, so I have a set of the regular tools, the plastic or the Teflon, whatever they are, tools to use in that. Don't use a metal screwdriver unless you just want to live on the edge. Check the input jacks, make the speaker jack, make sure it was tight. Always make sure that you have your speaker hooked into the left jack. Something else, when you take the back off of it, you can, it helps to loosen the chassis screws on each side. Just loosen them, and it'll help that back come off. It kind of compresses, so if you loosen those off a little bit. But pretty much that's what I did to it. And it, like I say, I think it sounds better than it did before I started. So that's always a good thing. So I've got everything tied back up. A little tight getting this top board out. It's a little tight getting the bottom board out. These boards are super fragile. So, you got to be really, really careful removing these things, because these solder joints, it's lead-free solder. That's another point. Using lead solder, make sure to get all the old solder off. Try not to raise a pad or a trace if you can, help it at all. But use a solder sucker, get that up, some soldering wick, clean those pads good, because the lead-free and the lead solder don't mix, and you'll end up with a bad solder joint. So make sure you get all those clean. So, I may give this thing a little test run and see. But a new one of these amps, this one's a 2002. They're a little bit different. They've got a little better jack for your foot switch than most of them. The input jacks are a little better, but although that one had something in it, they were getting staticky. I got rid of them. So, cleaned I think I said I cleaned the pots, all that. Because I usually set my amp for where I like it, and I don't change it. So they get scratchy because they never moved. So anyway, that's about it for that. And I'll probably clip the camera mic with the thing, and it's going to sound terrible by the time it's played in here with all this echo and rattling of everything. And then by the time YouTube compresses it, it's going to sound terrible. But, you know, if you're sitting here in the room, it actually sounds pretty good. Okay. I should have picked up a guitar that was in tune, but it'll work. So this is just your regular clean channel on input 1. I mean, it's, you know, reverb's about 2.5, and I hadn't got everything all set like I want it yet. It sounds a little bit different. The drive channel, which I never use, is, you know, I never use the drive channel, so yeah, but it's seems to have better sound to it than it did. You know, it seems to do all right. So anyway, that's about it for this video. That was just a little look at something a little bit different. I hadn't done much guitar stuff lately. I think I've got another video coming out. Been kind of busy with other things. Oh, let's see if I can get in the film here. So I hadn't really got a lot of that done. Been working on a lot of radios and stuff like that. And like I say, I don't film all that because watching somebody recap a radio, it's hard to film. It's rather boring. It's kind of fun to do, but it's kind of boring to watch. So anyway, guys, I hope that's a little something different. I'm not an amp tech. I don't pretend to be one, but this is something you can do yourself if you have a little bit of electronic knowledge. So anyway, I've saved myself a little bit of money by being able to restore this thing and get it back in working shape. So anyway, guys, I appreciate it. Until the next time, see you.